office?
The Secretary of State's office has three specific missions, three specific roles. There's election services, there's business services, and then there are public services. So under election services, the Secretary is the chief election regulator. Doesn't actually administer elections, that goes to the counties, but takes care of all kinds of stuff, from campaign finance to doing logic and accuracy tests in all of the counties to certify equipment and certify election officials in Arizona as well. For business services, there's a lot of UCC filings, trademark filings, and a lot of other business services that are required under law, state and federal statute. The Secretary of State has responsibility over that. And then public services, you're talking about all of the rest of the stuff that the Secretary does. Libraries, archives, museums, things of this nature, and those duties come and go. Yeah, I think the shiny object right now is elections, but really the crux of the office, in my view, is business services, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why we're so engaged in this race with Republicans and independents, the business community, industry, tech, the medical community, because the filings that happen at the Secretary's office have to happen like clockwork. It is a ministerial job. You've got to keep doing it day in and day out and not get distracted by the other stuff. That's not to say elections are a distraction, quite the opposite. But by only focusing on elections, I think a lot of people forget the critical role that the Secretary's office plays in so many other parts of our society. But elections obviously is the topic of the day, and so we do talk a lot about that. A lot of people just look at my record and they realize the good work we did in a bipartisan manner with the Republican Board of Supervisors, right? It was a 4-1 Republican board here in Maricopa County. I'm a Democrat. And we got a lot of great stuff done together. And that's because we put the partisanship aside and we said, what are we going to do that's best for our voters? How are we going to best create a system to administer our elections? What resources do you all have to bring to bear? What experience and training do we all have to bring to bear? And then let's put all of that together. And a lot of folks who are now on this coalition of Republicans and Independents for Fontes, they recognize that with me, they're going to get a level-headed administrator who is going to maintain the reputation of Arizona as a great place for business opportunity and other opportunities for prosperity, instead of the wild-eyed fanaticism that we see from my opponent. And I think it's the instability that my opponent presents that is pushing people away from his campaign. It's the conspiracy theories, the constant lies, and not being able to depend on real facts. You know, the business community relies on real world facts. They can't operate in the world of conspiracy theories. I mean, I guess unless they're selling pillows, but then again, that's just the dream world. The rest of us operate in reality, and we understand that our economy is critical, and for maintaining the Arizona that we all want to have, we have to recognize folks who want to make that happen the right way and not just kind of keep it political, right? We can't do that all the time. We all have our differences, right? And if there's anything Arizonans appreciate, it is an independent voice and an independent spirit, and that's what I bring. Everything that I've done, even some of the controversial stuff, has been in light of promoting the interest of the voters, not the office. It's been about the voters, not the bureaucracy. And really, we made our folks in that office work a lot harder and a lot longer to the benefit of the voters, not to the benefit of the folks in the office. And we ended up paying a bunch of overtime to do it, but the voters won. And that approach is the approach I want to bring to the Secretary of State's office, the approach that we are providing a service. And it's the folks we are serving, whether it's voters, the business community, folks who are looking for information, they're the ones where the focus ought to be put to them. So whether it's any differences I might have with Secretary Hobbs or with Ms. Lake or General Brnovich or any of those folks is irrelevant to me. What matters is that Arizonans understand that we're going to be serving them better. A quick example is one of the processes at the recorder's office that we shortened from 6 weeks between filing and posting. We reduced that amount of time to 72 hours. And when business people, when folks out there in the economy are looking for government to operate at the speed of business, I've already delivered on that, and I'm going to deliver on it for the business services in the Secretary's office. That's what people want. They know we've got the technology. They know we've got the capacity. We just need the leadership to make sure that folks are being served well. I will tell you, I'm very glad you mentioned that, because when I was the chief deputy recorder in Pima County for the new county recorder, she asked me to bring the program of vote centers from Maricopa County down to Pima County. Now, I didn't invent that. That was invented by a Republican in Yavapai County, right? But it was the best model for voters. They can turn their ballot in or they can vote anywhere. So from Yavapai to Maricopa, now to Pima County, there are a few counties left in Arizona. Absolutely, we want to make that happen. We've already moved in that direction in most of Arizona's counties. It's easier, it's more convenient, it's more secure, and as a matter of fact, it's much more accountable, because to do that, you need certain technology. That technology makes it harder to cheat, right? So we want to make it easier to vote. We are continuing to do that. And my opponent wants to kill all early voting and all vote by mail. He wants every voter to vote only on election day, only in their precinct, and if you want to vote absentee, he wants to force you to fill out an entire form and give a rationale that he gets to scrutinize to decide if you get your ballot early. That's unreasonable. It's ridiculous and it's restrictive, and it doesn't follow Arizona's tradition of freedom of choice when it comes to voting. You can vote in person, you can vote by mail. That's what I want to preserve and protect. Well, as a basic American value statement, I believe that the people should see their candidates face to face. That is a core to me. It's an important part of the American tradition in politics, going well before the Lincoln-Douglas debates and so on. That being said, I cannot make a judgment call for another candidate, whether it's a candidate in my party or another party, whether they decide to or not to. We each have to run our own campaign, right? And we each have to make our own best judgments. And the public gets to decide whether that is a good judgment call. And I think that analysis is playing out right now in the public arena. I know that our campaign got great benefit from watching, being able to see my sort of steadiness and just having the genteel conversation that I had versus Mr. Fincham's sort of off the wall, bouncing up and down and screeching that he did. That was a good side-by-side for us, right? I don't know that any other campaign would make the same decision, and that's up to them. And I really think that they'll, that's part of that campaign's decision-making process, and I'm not going to step on anybody's toes. Look, elections are not a simple thing. Here's the way you ought to look at elections. Elections are like organizing the perfect wedding reception in multiple locations, and every single person that walks in the door is a bride, okay? They are incredibly detailed, and you have to do months and months, if not years, of planning to make this happen. And the Pinal County Board of Supervisors simply did not give their department the resources they needed when they needed them. As I understand, they had 7 staff positions, and it wasn't until March that they got their 5th one filled. That's insane. There was no way they were going to be ready on time. And those of us who were watching these sorts of things unfold over time really were kind of sitting back wringing our hands. And it's really not our place to say, but as Secretary of State, I can tell you this. Every one of those 15 counties is going to have a plan well ahead of time. And we will be in communication with each of the boards of supervisors, the election department, and the county recorders to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again. Not that we have any enforcement authority. That falls to the counties. But we certainly do have A, the experience, B, we know which questions to ask, and C, the time and perspective to be able to ask, do you need help? Are you ready for this? Are you ready? Are you meeting your markers along the way? And let's face it, the big lie has chased away a lot of really good election administrators. We've lost the county recorder in Yuma County. We lost the county recorder in Yavapai County. We lost the chief deputy recorder in Pima County. Virginia Ross in Pinal had to go from county recorder to election director. So we've got an enormous amount of experience that is missing. And we have to have folks that know how to ask the right questions at the higher levels so that we can get the resources necessary into the counties to serve the voters. Because these are not simple issues that just pop up once every couple of years. This is a 12-month-a-year, every year endeavor to make sure that what happened in Pinal County does not happen again. That's what happens when you follow this don't spend any money on government mantra that a few people have. You're going to get what you paid for. And Pinal County's voters got cheated. There's a couple things going on here. First and foremost, those of us in the profession of election administration have seen this for a while. And it's gotten a little bit worse and worse, but it was definitely amped up after 2020. And actually coming into 2020 when in April of 2020, the president said, if I lose, it's because it was unfair. So we knew we had to get it perfect. And that was rough. After that, institutions like the Brennan Center really started tracking the loss, the brain drain, the experience drain that we had all across the United States of America, tracking the threats against election workers. Some of us continue to have contact with the FBI because of threats that emerge, even after not being in office. And so it goes even back to last year. I testified before the House Committee on Administration specifically about threats to myself and my family and my staff at the Maricopa County Recorder's office. This is a bad thing, but it does highlight what was an anonymous office, right? The county recorder, nobody ever paid attention. Election director, nobody really paid that much attention. Secretary of State, it was lower on the attention scale. It's higher now, and that's not a good thing because of why it's more important. If we were being paid attention to because we really valued our democracy originally and we didn't take it for granted, that'd be great. If people were just celebrating democracy and celebrating the amazing people, Republicans and Democrats and independents who actually run our elections, that'd be awesome. That would be an awesome reason to be getting more attention. But we're not. We're getting more attention because of the nonsense from these people who can't take one single loss in one single race. And by the way, that's really important. When they asked my opponent in the debate, what's different between 2020 and the primary in 2022, he said the candidates. He's motivated by the political loss of Donald Trump. That's the only thing that he thinks about. In fact, in that debate and in the one last night, he was wearing a Donald Trump pin. Is he going to be loyal to the Constitution or to Donald Trump? That's the question voters need to answer in this race. I think that the interesting thing is that the perspective that they're using, the big lie is coming from the perspective of this candidate got cheated. All other complaints that we've really ever had is about these voters got cheated. These voters got suppressed. These voters, they made it harder for these voters to vote. Those aren't two political perspectives, right? When you have an entire political party that's dedicated to one candidate's grievance and not looking at all of the voters, and then trying to suppress all the other voters by killing ballot by mail, forcing people to stand in line, right? That perspective is perverse when it comes to the traditional set of complaints that you talk about. Oh, polling places in certain areas, or not notifying voters in an appropriate language, or being insensitive this way or another, or not giving resources. I mean, those are all sort of the traditional what's best for the voter sort of attitude. And we continue to try to improve on that year in and year out. And yes, there are no perfect elections. But when an entire party is dedicated to upending our democracy, upending the constitutional order, stopping the peaceful transfer of power because of one person's grievance, not even a partisan grievance. Arizona still has a majority in the House and the Senate and statewide offices. I mean, we're still operating the way we have operated for a long time. But it's not about that. It's about one person's grievance. That's really hard to swallow because that's a very anti-American way of looking at things. Right? The American way is to say, hey, we won a race, we lost a race, we've got another cycle. Let's kind of batten down the hatches and punch harder next time, right? That's the American way. What they're talking about, that's not how we do things in America. And I really worry when people consider that one person's grievance, you'll pardon the use, trumps the interest of the Constitution. Well, first and foremost, when we elect a governor, we hope that that person serves their 4-year term.
Fair enough.
When we elect a Secretary of State, we hope that person serves their 4-year term, because that's what the voters wanted. And the voters, we presume, understand that the Secretary does move to the governor's office. And we know that people in Arizona understand that because it's happened 5 times in our history and 4 times, I believe, in the last 40 years. So we have to be versed in that. I have to understand all of the issues across the board and how we're going to approach things in the unfortunate circumstance that that happens. And I say unfortunate circumstance because I'm not running for governor, I'm running for Secretary of State. But it is front of mind for many, many voters. And it's very front of mind for the Republicans and independents who've come on board in our coalition. They know my opponent. We have elected sitting members of the House of Representatives who are his colleagues who are now endorsing me because they know him. And they do not want him under any circumstances to be a heartbeat away from the governor's office. And so that in and of itself is sort of a point that people should pay attention to. And you know, we're ready to have the discussion about all of the pertinent issues. But as so far as succession is concerned, yeah, this is unique as far as I know in the American states, but there's 50 in some territories, so I don't know how every single one of them works. It's about telling that story. It's about making the distinction between someone who's going to blame the anonymous government, right? And someone who's going to say, that's not an anonymous government, it's you. It's your neighbors, it's your family members, it's your friends. They're the ones who ran the election. And you can trust them. You can believe in them. You can have faith. Don't lose faith like what they want. Let's not kind of worship at the foot of the golden calf and get lost. No. Let's work together. Let's show folks that the law that we swore to uphold and protect is still good. And it belongs to all of us as American citizens working together. This campaign is about that message. And so have I been able to share that message? That's what this campaign is about, you know. And obviously we could always use more help with volunteers and resources to make that easier and spread the word. But that's really our job, and I think we've been doing it pretty well.